the patients, many of them are outside of my specific faith. I have to walk in and first find out where that patient's at in terms of faith. Mm-hmm. And so if they're completely against it, completely, never believed it, but I still have to be able to speak to them. I still have to be able to spend time with them. But when someone doesn't want that, I try my best to connect anyway, that an impact can be made even without words being said explicitly. Yes. And so, and people often will, respond with like, "Oh, you're so calming." That really is more than just me. I believe that. I believe there's something spiritual going on, even in those interactions. So the presence, the ministry of just presence is so important.
Welcome to Set the Table. I'm your host, Peace Ike. In a world where shouting matches have replaced dialogue, we're creating something different, something human. For the past several years, I've been gathering complete strangers around dinner tables to talk about race, religion, politics, you name it. Now we're bringing those conversations to you, alongside insights from thought leaders and curious minds who are making sense of our divided world and showing us a better way to engage it. So pull up a chair. There's room for you at the table. Welcome back to the Set the Table podcast. It's really great to be with you guys again. It's been a while since I did an episode. And I've never been so eager to record an episode and interview anyone as I am in this moment. And I think you guys will understand why. So I'm coming into this episode really with a sense of sobriety and acknowledging that in many ways, this is going to be different than our others. And I consider this kind of a holy moment. And let me tell you a bit about today's guest, and then I'll introduce him. So today's guest has spent his life crossing lines geographically, culturally, theologically. He was raised in a small town with a big heart for service. And so he ended up trading in an engineering career for a life rooted in urban outreach and pastoral care. For 15 years, he taught and led adult education programs in some of Philly's most underserved neighborhoods, one of which is considered one of the nation's #1 drug capitals. That area is called Kensington. And now as a hospice chaplain, he sits with people in their final days, processing with them life's biggest questions as they prepare for their own death. He has walked in both conservative and progressive faith circles. He's navigated deep ideological divides, and he's built unlikely relationships even in the midst of disagreement. His life's work is really, truly a testament to humility, compassion, and the quiet power of presence. So if you can't tell, I admire this man more than words can describe. So let me go ahead and introduce you guys to Jonathan Ziegler. Jonathan, welcome to the Set the Table podcast.
Thank you so much, Peace, and thank you for the intro. It's an honor to be able to just reflect on things together today, and hopefully inspire some other people.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to this. Honestly, I've been waiting to interview you for several years, and I've been waiting for a long time to have this conversation with you. And I remember the first time I met you, and you told me a little bit about what you do, and I was instantly drawn to be in your world. And I made sure that I was. So I invited you to things I was doing with my nonprofit and dinners that I was hosting, because I could just tell that you were a wealth of wisdom. And I believe I was correct. So could you just go ahead and introduce yourself again? I know I told the audience, the listeners, a little bit about you, but maybe anything else that you'd like to share so they can get to know you better?
Yeah, sure. Well, I live here in North Philly, and I have a family. I have a wife and 3 children. 2 of them are teen and preteen, and 1 is a toddler. So our life changed a lot recently with the new baby last year. So that's the core of my life is my family. And then I'm also very involved in church. And of course, as you said, work as a chaplain full-time in the healthcare system. I consider myself a Christian, and I've lived in Philly for about almost 20 years. I think it actually is 20 years this fall. So it's not where I grew up, but it is where I've lived for a long time. So it's home, and in many ways, I'm become a Philadelphian, and it's influenced me in so many ways. But I still, have a background kind of growing up in the country in central Pennsylvania. And so I enjoy the mix of those worlds in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a transplant too. And one of the things I always say about Philly is that Philly has a way of growing you up. So for those
Yeah.
of us who come from maybe smaller towns, or I'm from Pittsburgh, which is a little bit more Midwest, Philly can be a rude awakening. It's really rough around the edges. But I think Philly really helped me mature into a stronger and more aware version of myself. So I wonder if any of that feels familiar to you as well.
Yeah. I definitely came to Philly, by choice. I wanted to come and leave behind the world I grew up in for whatever reason, for, probably deep reasons and lighter reasons too. I just liked the independence and the culture of the friends that I had, to meet in Philly. Um, but yeah, like different phases of life, I've been engaged in different ways in terms of work and church. And so um, I've experienced different parts of Philly, both in different cultures within the city. So it's grown me up just by the various experiences I've had, and um, the challenge of forging a life that's very different from the life my parents raised me in.
Yeah. Well, let me start there because I know that I read your bio and I learned a lot of things that I didn't even know about you. But one of the things I learned is that you grew up in a small town, a conservative suburban home, and you had said money was tight, but your parents prioritized servanthood and giving to others, even when they didn't have much. And so I'm curious, do you think that posture was typical of the conservative circles that you knew growing up, or was your family more of like an outlier in that way?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, as far as I can think, it was normal around me. Like I knew plenty of people that had very servant-like hearts, and I was a part of a big church growing up too. So they had a lot of like outreach type programs, and people were involved in things that were, we were involved in a ministry that gave away clothes, and my parents always served in like food cupboard type ministries in our town. And I think my extended family and, other people at the church were pretty engaged in those kind of things. I think at one point there, when I was like a young adult, I maybe judged that culture differently and felt that it wasn't common enough, maybe. Like when I actually saw what was going on in the rest of the world and in the inner city, kind of seeing like, oh, well, they all ignore it, and just go about their easy lives out in the suburbs and build a big expensive church building and things like that. I was much more critical for a period of my life of the world I grew up in. And so maybe didn't think that, but I would say now, as I look back, I do still see a lot of good hearts of people in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hindsight often offers the ability to understand more fully and with more empathy the things we
Mm-hmm.
think we know when
Mm-hmm.
we're growing up as kids and teenagers. And it's funny because it's like no matter how much you try to avoid it, you always turn into one of those people who are like, these kids these days, they don't
Right,
know what they've got.
right, right.
It catches up to us eventually. Me
Yep.
too. So yeah, I mean, you kind of grew up in a family that prioritized those things, and then, you were drawn to a life of service, and you left your engineering career after going on several missions trips,
Mm-hmm.
and you never really went back to it. And so, my question is, what was it about those first experiences in serving in the inner city that drew you in and convinced you that you wanted to build this life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, those experiences went further back too than even the missions trips. They went all the way back to childhood, hearing stories on the radio. My parents always had like the Christian radio station on, but we would hear stories of brokenness and healing and people turning away from drug addiction. There's be these radio programs that would play that. That's the earliest memory of inspiration that I remember feeling drawn to, like the brokenness of the world and wanting to like use faith as a way to bring transformation. And then I read certain books of certain stories of maybe people who were in gangs and then turned their lives around. And I even had a youth leader throughout youth group that would take us every weekend, or not every weekend, every year for a weekend to a different city, like Philly, Baltimore, New York, DC, and would do a service project just for like a Saturday. We'd stay overnight, but then we'd do the service on Saturday and maybe visit a church on Sunday. And so I had this chance to experience this world outside. Now, at that point, it seemed like a scary world to me, right? We were very like managed, like stay in the church, don't go outside kind of thing whenever we were in a place like North Philly or something. But that led to, some trips to New Orleans in college, which had to do with service and, loving on homeless people on the streets, giving out food and talking to them. And there probably became more of the life transition. So I had already been in my engineering degree, working on my engineering degree at Geneva College for a few years. But by senior year, it was more like, I don't really want to go do this. So just to clarify, I never really got started in the career part. I just finished the degree and went right into mission year after college, which was basically a year-long program in Philly to live in community, deepen in faith, but faith more related to loving and serving in poor communities and learning about like social justice things and things like that. So that year was, of course, transformative, but even getting to that year was a transformation and really kind of took away my desire to do anything with engineering. I mean, I didn't really love it by the end of college anyway, but I just knew I wanted to be in the mix in the city and in some way work with people who are struggling and bring about restoration.
Absolutely. You said, "Oh, I didn't do the career part. I just finished the degree." And I'm here thinking, but that's the expensive part. And I'm wondering how your parents took that.
Well, we worked it out. I still, had to pay back money that I borrowed from extended family and things. I was blessed to have some scholarships and things. So, my parents weren't the ones really paying for it. So, they, my relationship with my parents at that point was, not always easy, right? Like me and my mom maybe argued about things a lot, or I was kind of like, going through that stage of really getting my independence and figuring out how to be who I was separate from them. So I think I probably, if they would have pressured me around, you need to do engineering or you need to stay close to home, I would have just argued against it. They knew to kind of let me go and try my thing. Oh, yeah. And they knew I was seeking to do it under some level of, I guess, covering and wisdom of, leadership and things like that. I wasn't like totally off the deep end or something in terms of how they see things. But it also wouldn't have been their desire probably for me to like move to Philly at that time. If it was up to them, they probably thought I should live at home for a while and get a good job. But
I'm familiar with that dynamic. I come from a Nigerian family where there's only a few things that you really are championed to do, and it's the higher education, and then those fields in technology and science and medicine. And I definitely went that route, and got my physical therapy doctorate and practiced that for 15 years. But, the truth is, like, when your heart burns for something, there is nothing in the world that can pull you away from that thing. And there are so many forces in the world right now telling kids and teenagers and young adults that, like, you've got to go down certain paths and that this is what success looks like. And, I'm here. I just recently turned 40, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I served my time as a physical therapist. I still use it. It's very helpful, and, I'm so blessed by it. But, like, what burned me up while I was with those patients, in a good way, I mean, was serving their hearts. And, I truly would just be in the house with them when I was doing home care eventually. And this is why you and I have some crossover, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But the brokenness and the amount of tears that, you sit through with these clients as they're talking through what they're going through, their struggles, it's almost like the joint pain is not as important, as the heart pain. And I remember so many times just feeling like, this is not what I was made to do. I was made to do more. And I'm sure that's what really drove you at that point to say, I'm going to go after what I was called to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I had a couple summer internships, with engineering companies. So I did taste that work a little bit during college. And I remember, being in like an office or whatever, thinking like, this doesn't feel like what I'm made to do. But of course, back then I wasn't sure where I was going. I was just going to try something else. But I did want to add another thought about like my parents too. In terms of education, they actually didn't pressure me even about college because they were not fully college educated themselves. They were just very practical about like making enough money, being practical. And no one in my extended family ever moved away from the area that I grew up in. I think to this day, I have some my cousin's children that finally moved like to Pittsburgh. But for a long time, I was the only one that even left the area, and I'm only 2 hours away. So
wow.
we're very like stay in central Pennsylvania kind of family. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, touching back on like your family of origin, I want to kind of transition a little bit more into all the church contexts that you have moved from and through. And before we even dive into this, one of the things that's I've noticed, like, as these podcast episodes have gone on, they've become way more faith-centric. Most people know I started off in politics, but the more I have these heart-centered conversations, the more they center back on the matters of the heart. And so faith is always at the center of that conversation. And so for my listeners, I invite you in to listen and even see if any of this strikes a bell, whether you have a faith background or not. There are so many common ties that we can draw through each other's stories. So yes, you've navigated a lot of faith church contexts. You've gone from rural, evangelical to Anabaptist to urban ministry, progressive into Pentecostal, like truly a diverse background. And so I'm curious to know, how has that shaped the way that you engage with people who see faith differently than you and meet them where they're at?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it just is part of what made me ready for doing this at this stage in my life. I can't imagine what kind of chaplain I would have been when I was 25, but, by experiencing those things, and I can honestly look back over my main experiences with church and faith and say they were pretty much good. Now, at certain transition points, I may have had my critiques, definitely of the church I grew up in, even of the church that I was, had been a part of in Philly for a while, and until a few years ago. Definitely can have my critiques, but my experience over those years was good, and I was committed, and I was serving and growing, and even now my experience is good where I'm at. And so having good experiences in communities that have very, I'd say, significantly different theology helps me when I meet people who may have different views. I can say, well, I see why you think that way, or I can see why that's helpful. And, oh, you know, I've been a part of something like that, or I know what, you know, your experience is like. I don't know. So, you know, just having those experiences, definitely, it's not just like I respect, because I mean, I haven't had every experience, right? I've always been in the Christian tradition, and there are certainly Christian traditions that I haven't been a part of. I've never been part of a Lutheran church, or I've never, you know, there's plenty of denominations or whatever I've not been a part of. But I've been a part of enough variety that even people in those different things that are way different, or even like, you know, I meet a lot of Catholic patients or Baptist, and I have been a part of a Baptist church for like a year. That was mission year. But even the ones that I haven't been a part of as much, I can understand how someone could have a very different outlook and still how that could be valuable in their life and not necessarily like wrong, even if I don't agree with everything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I've traveled through a lot of different circles and over the course of my life. And although I've also always been in the context of the Christian faith, I've left the Christian faith during certain seasons of my life, large seasons of my life. And so kind of living in that more agnostic state, more so in my graduate school years. It's weird to say that it was a blessing. The blessing is truly that I found myself again. But being able to be in that place and know what it feels like to be, you know, living a life that looks nothing like the life I'm living right now, has been such a big part of my learning curve, to now be able to meet people who are living that same life that I was living, you know, 15, 20 years ago. And I think that sometimes for those of us who are in the faith, we're so used to our circle and our bubble that we forget what it feels like to be a human on the other side. And so I'm so much more so much less dogmatic now at this point in my life than I used to be. And I think that's the beauty of having these diverse experiences. And when you were younger, would you say you were a little bit more in the box about how the world works than you are now?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. There was like a very clear, prescripted way to think about everything, you know, and so there was more of a box. But even after leaving that box, in some ways, there was another box that could be pushed, you know? And so the challenge when we try to leave our boxes, whatever those boxes are, I mean, a box could be unbelief too, or like being boxed into what those people think on whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, or spiritual view or religious affiliation. But when we leave our boxes or try to kind of not be so confined, the challenge is not to just jump in another box.
Totally.
I think that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
Because even right now, you were mentioning being less dogmatic. For some people, I think being less dogmatic can lead to another box, because they can be so set on not believing any one thing or something. Like they can be so set on, and I don't mean to be accusing those who are listening who might fall into this, but just consider, like, even if you have a belief that like all religions are the same, well, that's still a specific belief that you can get stuck in, and then not be open to actually believing something specific. And so I also, while I'm less in a box, less dogmatic than what I grew up in, I also have come to appreciate the passion that goes along with very specific beliefs, and some, I hate to reuse the word dogma because I know it has a negative connotation, but I don't know if there's a positive term for just like, you know, having, you know, believing certain healthy doctrine or just healthy values for life, and holding to those values and being like committed to those values. That's actually like still valuable. doing whatever is not proven healthy for me or people I know.
Yeah. Well, the word I think that I would use there is conviction.
There you go.
And for me, that has been, even in finding my way back to Christ, it was moving from dogma to conviction. Because in my earlier, because when I came back from my agnostic phase, I actually became very dogmatic in a negative way where, sometimes when you just make that swing, that polarized, when you've just swung over to the other side, it comes with a bit of self-righteousness. And I'll admit, I went through that time when I was just like, it was more about being right than finding God, if that makes sense. And so once I kind of became, got back to a healthy balance, I didn't have to protect my rules the way I thought I did, because I actually had found a relationship with God that birthed something deeper than my way or the highway. And it was that real ongoing relationship. And so I think that's the work of being a true believer. Unfortunately, there is a lot of dogma and dependency on roles throughout a lot of Western Christian culture. But what I love about being a true believer is that when you walk with God, you're walking in a relationship, and that relationship guides you. So you don't need to depend on your own righteousness. And so that's really been the journey of my life as a believer. So, yeah.
And I feel a lot of grace for people that maybe have, like, that are at the different stages, right? And that's the thing. Like, it's not, we're not saying all this to say like, oh, now we got to this certain point, and so all the people that are at those other stages are just not, doing well or something. It's like, I think you can do a lot of good at the different stages. I think when I was coming out of college and moving to Philly and had certain passionate critiques of what I grew up with, I was still trying to figure out how to do some good with that, and so I don't look at myself then and say I was all messed up. I think I had some good there. And all along the way, I tried not to be someone that just swung one way or the other. I think that idea of like the swinging pendulum and how people like, people leave a conservative upbringing and become really liberal, or some people leave, progressive world and become really conservative. I just never got into those sort of extremes or those labels or swinging so far. And for me, that's not even just about being right in the middle, but it's about having, like you said, the convictions that I believe are right. And some of them align on one end and some on the other, but I can still feel strongly about certain things and not just fit in the big box.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's true to how I experience you thus far and in these years. And so I'm so eager to dive into more about your chaplaincy, but you kind of touched on one thing that makes me want to just ask a clarifying question, because I don't even know if I know the answer to this. But through all your movement, have you always landed in a very, I would say, like moderate place, maybe even politically? Have your environment ever swayed you more in one way than the other?
I guess so. Certainly your environment affects you and affects the expression of what you think. So my environments typically are probably not as moderate as I am expressing right now, right? That I am, right? So I do have and those are multiple environments at once, right? Like, I live in Philadelphia. I'm part of a church. I work at a healthcare system. I have influences in different directions all the time. I have family, I have friends, I have old friends, I have friends with different experiences that would get them labeled conservative or liberal, so yes, the environment does sway you. But I'm trying to think of how to explain. Like, I don't think the environment should take you away from your true beliefs and convictions, but our environment should influence us in how we express and live those things out, because just to give a little biblical reference, Paul writes about being all things to all people. And I think there is a, interpretation of that means like we consider where people are at when we express what we think. We consider them and how to, if we want to convince them of something, we consider the best way to do that and not just yell at them or tell them they're wrong right away. So I'm kind of with that kind of thinking. I don't know. It's also interesting whenever I talk about this stuff, because then I think like, well, there's some people who are more bold and blunt and brash in their expression of on certain issues, and there's probably a place for them too, right?
Yes.
But that's not what I'm gifted with or called to. And so we all have a different place and a different role in the whole mission that we're on, I guess you could say. And so mine has come to this place, of serving in chaplaincy and of course serving in my church too. And I just bring who I am and who I feel God's made me, and what I've been gifted with. And, in sort of church terms, that's a more pastoral gifting. That's the word that has kind of landed for me. And so that involves meeting people where they're at and listening and continuing to share and speak into people. It's not just listening and saying nothing, but to speak into in a way that can be heard in that moment and can help move someone forward without bringing harm to them in some way.
Absolutely. That's so well said. So much of what we communicate, it's not about what we're saying, it's about how we're saying it. And I think that oftentimes we get into these ideological gridlocks because we're not actually fighting about what we think we're fighting about. Now I'm just talking about society as a whole. Oftentimes the ideological gridlock is because the way we're saying something has communicated something to somebody else that probably wasn't intended. Maybe it was intended, but the way we're communicating is what has caused the friction, not the message itself. If we could really get that and digest that and be humble enough to say, okay, well, what ways can I work on how I'm saying what I want to say? I'm not changing my message. I'm not selling out. It's not that you're not being true to what you believe is right, but it's simply that you're preferring the other person. You're in essence, you're placing them before your own needs in that moment. And that's truly selfless communication. What does that person need to hear right now? And how can I say what I believe is important to say in a way that they'll receive it? It's a gift. Yeah, it's a gift. So, okay, I'm going to ask the question that I think everybody is waiting for. Well, there's many questions, but I think the first one that, you hear this question anytime you think about someone who sits with another person at the end of their life, the question is always, what do people most regret right before they pass away? So I'm going to ask that. Maybe it's a bit sensational, but take it for what it is. And I'm all ears.
Yeah. This is one of the kind of questions that comes up. One thing about these visits, with people in hospice, they don't always go into as much stuff as people think they do. I don't hear as much as everybody thinks sometimes. So I don't hear regrets all the time. I'll still answer the question, but I don't hear them as much as you might think, because many people are just tired, want some comfort. They might share about their family a little bit. They may not even be talking, and it may be the caregiver sharing for them. But so the conversations aren't always as deep as people imagine, I think, is one of the things. But I do want to share, because I think this topic connects to what we're talking about a lot too. The thing that came to mind when I thought about it, and I just had this come to mind like today, so I'm glad this answer came to mind for this conversation. People, I think they regret broken relationships. Like, especially with their children, like when people, tell about their children and then they're like, but that one's estranged, or, or if I've had people where kind of, they have 2 or 3 children and none of them are involved with them anymore. And here they are like needing care in bed at the end of life and the children don't come around. And it's like, you start to wonder like, well, what was that parenting like, but of course I'm not like accusing them of their parenting at this moment, but like, it's sad to think of like losing your relationship with your children. But I definitely like see the regret in that when people, can't see their children because they're estranged and the child is probably just across the country waiting to hear that they died. And then they'll jump in and take care of business, so.
Wow.
So I think that relationships are a big part of what people think of. And many of us have some relationship that didn't go the way we hoped. But especially those, sort of blood relationships, I guess, within the family, when they're broken, that can be a big regret. And again, I don't always get far enough to know why those relationships fell through. Like, people don't always want to sit there and just go through the nitty gritty of their past because they're already feeling pain and suffering. So, but thinking of like what must be in their minds sometimes of like what they did wrong in those relationships and how they may regret, how they were, many years ago, is something I think about. And I think it connects to what we're talking about because we're often talking about now, people having different opinions and disagreeing and how you do that without harming a relationship.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
Yeah, I would have thought that that's what you would say, that would be your answer to the question, because I can't imagine what's more important than the relationships that have been broken over the course of one's life. And so even though I didn't know that was going to be your answer, I was just thinking to myself, all the stuff going on right now in society that has caused people to cut off their family members, ostracize the ones that they love or the ones that love them due to different disagreements on what is considered right or wrong, about the world we currently live in. I can't imagine that at the end of one's life that wouldn't seem all the less important. I can't imagine.
Right. And which is why I also think it's like, interesting when, people think about like, oh, you deal with people with so many different backgrounds and different views. But like the political side of things doesn't really come up that much. Right. Like, I don't really go into houses and people are like talking about the latest thing on the news from the president or something. It's rare. I mean, it's there sometimes because if it's on the TV at that time, people might make comments and that's fine. We don't get into discussions, but like the person that's like sick is not really like thinking about, the current events that much or the political stuff. They're really like just trying to get through the day.
Yeah.
And they might be thinking about their life, certainly with processing end of life, but they're not really like wrapped up in that. So I think selfishly, I kind of enjoy that about my work because I get to, in terms of like a ministry role, I get to just talk to people about the stuff that's in their life at the moment. I don't have to like get up in front of people and address my take on an issue the way maybe some pastors feel like they have to do or something,
Yeah.
And that can be a challenge, right, for them. But
well, I can imagine when someone is approaching death, it's, and so in many ways, these are like your clients, I mean, they're more than that, but at least they're that. Yeah. And so when they've chosen you or agreed to allow you to be the one that walks them through the stage in their life, there are boundaries that you have to honor, because this is their wish. And I think, I mean, I'll be honest, and I've said this to you before, I don't think I could do what you do. As much as I love people and as much as I do what I'm doing here with my work, that's a level of gravity that I don't know if I'm able to have. I don't know if I have the bandwidth for, because this walk of faith is so important and so real to me, as it is to you as well, that I'm too biased to walk someone to the end of their life and not have that be at the forefront of our conversations. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm just curious, for this is the question that, as much as I said the other one's on everyone's mind, this is the one that I've been waiting to ask, which is, how do you reconcile your personal convictions about God and faith and eternity and afterlife with patients who don't share those same convictions and they're at the end of their life? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And definitely something I think about a lot. To start, I think, especially when I'm talking with other Christians about my work and they see it as, oh, you're like a minister, this is your ministry, you're, helping people, like they might even think I'm helping people make sure they're saved before they die or something like that in the terms of a Christian view. And I've realized more and more I have to clarify to myself and to others what this role actually is. Being a chaplain is so different from trying to minister within a church context where you've decided as an institution that we agree on a general belief system. And so we're going to minister towards that belief system. For me, every house I walk into is a new context. And the role itself is not necessarily the role of a Christian minister, so to speak. It's, to me, I'm still working out this thought because it's something I've been thinking of more recently, but I think the role of a chaplain is almost as secular as the role of a nurse or a doctor in a way. Now that's weird to say, but in a way, like a nurse who's a strong Christian, who has a patient who's a Christian and is struggling, might pray with that patient. We've had a doctor who was a pediatrician who was a Christian and prayed with our kids during the visits. People in different roles can make their faith known and pray, but they don't most of the time. They still care for people. They still love them. They do whatever they can to make it best for that person. Now, again, I'm not equating them. I have to be careful how I said that. It's not like chaplain, nurse, doctor are equal, but a little bit more towards that mentality, in the sense that I have to walk in and first find out where that patient's at in terms of faith. And so if they're completely against it, completely, never believed it, they don't want to hear anything about Christianity, that's fine. I'm not coming to pray with you then. That's not my role in this room. My role is emotional support. I'm a counselor. I have different roles within the same job, and I'm okay with that. I know some people, I think, might have a hard time navigating that, but I'm okay with it, because I don't think I'm just there to communicate about faith. I think I'm there even more broadly to bring some kind of comfort and encouragement to the situation. Now, I am a person of faith, and so when that door is open and when they express that they're interested in that, I'll go as far as we want to go with it. Now, it's not always, when I say far, it's not always a big conversation, because people aren't always up for a lot of conversation. But certainly I pray according to, my Christian faith many times, if that's what the faith is of that person. And if we don't share that in common, we have more of an emotional support experience, or I'll pray maybe a slightly broader kind of prayer, if we at least share a belief in God or something like that, or just share words of encouragement. So I really enjoy that. Yeah. I enjoy connecting with people that that don't share it as much as I enjoy connecting with people that are, I would say, like stronger faith than me. They minister back to me sometimes. They do. They really do. Some of them jump in and say a prayer before I leave to send me off. And it's like, whoa, that was cool. Wow. But when someone doesn't want that, I try my best to connect on a human level anyway, and just ask about, I ask some of the same things I ask people of faith, like, what, tell me about your family, tell me about your support system. How are you feeling about all this? So I just say that, like, there's a part of this role that's not, it's not that the only purpose of this role is sort of ministry in the sort of faith kind of way. It's a role within medical care that is spiritual and emotional support. And sometimes people just want the emotional support. And I'm okay with doing that when they want that.
Wow. I'm a little overwhelmed here in a good way, but I'm just processing a lot of feelings as I listen to you. I think one of those feelings I'm processing is, well, number one, of course, the difficulty that the difficult place that you're welcomed into these people's lives, and how you steward that with so much care and so much humility, and how even that can minister to people, the presence that you carry and the way that you honor them and the way that you respond to what they're saying and their loved ones are saying their needs are. Yet I'm also overwhelmed because I know I'm a deep feeler. I'm rough around the edges, but I'm a softie on the inside. I'm a deep feeler. Sure. And so I know that gravity would be with me as I left that person. But I'm also thinking to myself, I unless someone explicitly has told me, don't pray for me, I can pray for that person as I drive home. I can pray for that person in my quiet time. I don't need to vomit onto them what they don't want. And I mean, what a sign of maturity. And again, I acknowledge how difficult that is for someone with such a strong conviction, someone with a relationship with Christ. It's a very difficult place to be. I remember I was called in to go see a patient. I did home care for the last 5 years of my career. And once in a while, I am taking on hospice patients. Probably about 15% of my patients are hospice patients. And I went to go see a gentleman, and he was also dying. And I was in my car, and I just prayed. I just felt like there was like a holy assignment on this situation. And so I was just in my car. I was like, you know what, God, just lead me. I'm going to pray now, because I don't know what their needs are and what they want and what they allow me to do. And I walked in, and the sweet gentleman was in his bed, and his wife was by his bedside. And the minute I walked in, I just felt that that I came thinking there was something I needed to give them, but oh no, there was something I was going to receive. The peace that he carried as he was on his deathbed. And he did end up being a believer. I didn't even ask. He asked me, do you know the Lord? I'm like, whoa, I totally wasn't expecting that. But he asked me, and I just, beyond him asking me these questions about God and all of that, and eventually I told him, yes, I do. I'm a believer and I believe in these things. Beyond that was his peace and the fact that he imparted to me something that I needed in that moment. I was the anxious one. He was at peace. So we sometimes come into these moments and we think it's our job to save. We're not even humble enough to realize maybe there's something we need from this moment. Right.
Well, that's really good too. And the other thing that I didn't remember to say that was coming to mind as I was listening to you is how, I believe we carry the Holy Spirit with us wherever we are, and that an impact can be made even without words being said explicitly. And so, and people often will, respond with like, oh, you're so calming. Oh, you're you're obviously good at what you do because I feel better, after talking to you or something like that. And that's nice to hear. But I often think like that really is more than just me. Mm-hmm. I believe that. Mm-hmm. I believe there's something spiritual going on, even in those interactions where we may not have explicitly said, we're talking to God or we're Christians or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What's that phrase that it's a common saying, but it's something like, sometimes you're the only Bible people will ever read or something like that.
Sure.
But in moments like that saying is more real than ever,
And the other thing, when I think about like ministry in different contexts, you think about like pastors of churches or like maybe a priest of a parish. It comes to mind a little bit more even in the parish mentality, because Catholic parishes are usually by neighborhood, right? Like the people in that neighborhood are part of that parish. So the priest is kind of the priest of the neighborhood, like back in the day when the culture was more religious, he served the whole neighborhood. Anyone that died, that was the priest that did the funeral,
Yeah.
And so, but even now we don't have quite as much that mentality. But if you do think about like, a pastor is a pastor of more than just the people that come on Sunday. It's kind of the whole surrounding, someone who's ministering to the, like I feel like my pastors that I look to like see themselves as like, they're here for the city of Philadelphia. They're not just here for their church. It's kind of like, we want to work together to like bring restoration and transformation to Philadelphia. Yeah. And so, but think about it. Does that mean everybody in Philadelphia, like that they minister to, that they are going to preach to and they're going to pray with? But a lot of people don't even believe, but they still want to make an impact on them, And so I think like my sphere, my realm is like all these patients.
Yeah.
And so I want to make an impact and minister to all of them, but I know they're not all going to be in my church, so to speak. They're not going to be the believers that want me to do prayer and things like that. Mm-hmm, so pastors and ministers always have a broader sort of group of people they speak to than just the people in the church. So I think of like, if we don't have people in our sphere that are outside of, so again, for me, the sphere is the patients, but many of them are outside of my specific faith.
Yeah.
But I still have to be able to speak to them. I still have to be able to spend time with them.
Yeah.
And not necessarily expect it to just convert someone, not expecting someone to just convert in that one visit, but they might experience something of the loving spirit of God that is just a piece of their journey.
Yeah.
So and I have to be at peace with being just a piece of the journey. I can't expect myself to be the like savior.
Yeah. Has that ever weighed on you? It seems like you handle that very well.
I think I'm okay with it. I think if anything in my background, I've never been an overly driven person to like, this sounds bad, but like to accomplish a whole lot. Like, so I think that makes me, I think that makes me suited for chaplaincy though, because one thing I realized from day one of like doing it in the hospital, a lot of times you show up and do kind of nothing. You kind of sit there, like especially if it's a situation that's real traumatic and urgent in the hospital. This was more in the hospital than I deal with now. But sometimes it's like someone just came in and like died in the emergency room and the family is getting called in and they died in a car accident or a shooting or like something traumatic. And you just stand there. And all you can do is offer tissues. You're not even praying because no one's ready for prayer yet.
Right.
They're just shocked.
Right.
So the presence, the ministry of just presence is so important. And so, you don't see me right now, but I'm kind of putting my hands out and talking with my hands because this is like really important, right? Yeah. Like, it's just being able to show up. And so people just appreciate you showing up and being there. Whether it's a more traumatic situation in the hospital or it's like in their home and they're dying more slowly on hospice. Just having someone show up that, and even if they might have some faith belief or something, they sort of have a respect for the role, and so they kind of appreciate like someone who's associated with, you know, some kind of spiritual authority, so to speak, to come in. Like it matters at that time, just to be present.
Yes.
But man, there's a lot of times where it's not time to jump into saying very much. And getting back to my thing about accomplishing, sorry, I think I veered off a little bit, but
it was a good veer. It was a good veer.
The idea that a lot of my work may not feel like it's accomplishing anything major. Like the nurse goes in there and they make sure they get the medicine. They make sure they don't have any more pain because the medicine helps with pain. You know, a doctor fills out the prescriptions. They're like even the home health aide will go in and make sure they get cleaned up where they were dirty before or they needed diaper change. They're accomplishing things. I feel like I'm not accomplishing like tangible things, but I also feel like I'm kind of wired that way. And again, like I go back to where it sounds bad, right? It sounds like, you know, I've never been so driven to like make a lot of stuff happen. I'm not like a start a business kind of person. I'm not like I want to run the organization kind of person, but I'm just more of like, I want to be with people. Yeah. And so this role would be really hard for that kind of person, right? Yeah. If you want to grow a nonprofit or even a ministry or church, and you're driven to like see kind of big impact, like chaplaincy is probably not for you. I mean, there is impact. I see a lot of people, but you don't feel it day to day, right? You kind of feel some days like, I didn't do much today. Those people weren't very receptive, or like, you know, some days you have that, and it's just like, you just have to be okay with like, oh, well, that mattered. Cause like then later down the road, you hear that they were grateful you came, you know? Yeah. So being okay with not, you know, having some major accomplishment is definitely a part of the work. I'm not sure how I got to that.
It's so good though. It's so good. It's so good. I mean, oh man, there's so much I could say there, but thank you. You're bringing us back to what's really important. And one of the questions I was going to ask that you already just answered was, what does being present actually look like to you? And, you know, specifically for those who are listening who consider themselves to be Christians, this is a hard thing. This is a hard thing because so much of Christian culture is driven. It's active. It is get out on the streets, go do. And at the heart of it, I think what we lack is just being people of peace. What does our presence say to the world around us? When we walk into a room, what does our presence do to the atmosphere? What do people feel when they're around us? If we're saying all the right things, but people don't feel peace or any of, you know, what the scripture would call fruits of the spirit, joy and love. If they don't feel that, there's something wrong. There's something missing. And these are things that we all have to evaluate. I've had to evaluate these things along my journey. And that's really what I was referring to earlier from moving out of a place of dogma, was like, wow, I want to be these things. I don't just want to say these things. I want to be these things. And I would say like the hardest part about the kind of work that I'm doing right now with Set the Table and even podcasts like this one that you're joining me for, the hardest part, if I'm being honest, has been believers not seeing the value in it. And I'll go even farther to say that I've faced a lot of judgment, and especially in recent months as I've pursued this work of presence, because it doesn't feel driven enough. You know, where are the tracks? Where's the evangelism? And I, of course, as someone who believes and loves the Lord, of course, I know those things have their place. But like you're saying, there are different ways that we reach different people. There are different ways we interact with different people. Nothing supersedes presence. If we have all these things and we have not love, right? So this is the thing. If I had to say there's one thing that I believe is actively being kind of like worked out of many of us who believe. This is the thing I believe that God wants to like work out through those of us who believe. So this is so it. Yeah. This is so it.
Well, and I'm just going to go into that topic a little bit of like commenting on evangelism or something like that, because that also, you know, how we respond to like those different approaches of Christianity has been a part of my journey. Like, I think for certain seasons or times, I might have felt very negative towards that, or been around people who feel negative towards like more explicit evangelism. And I know even now, like I'm expressing like, yeah, I'm kind of like meeting people in a different way. And we're talking about this, but I'm getting to a point in life now where I can embrace a lot of different approaches. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not, and know that, oh, part of the reason I may have been kind of quote unquote against that at some point is because I'm not gifted in it, you know, like,
absolutely.
Because nowadays I know so many people who like benefited from that and whose lives are changed from like a more direct approach or something, you know, but I know other people who like got turned off by that approach. And so now I'm kind of seeing more and more like God's created such a variety of people, and we need such a variety of approaches to love the world we're in.
Come on.
That's what we need. And so, but we can't just react to one approach and be like, oh, throw that out, you know, throw that out. We're all just going to sit over here and like, be quiet. I don't know. Quietly meditate or something. Not that, you know, not that I'm throwing that out either, but like, you know, like, you know, just like we can't throw out all of it just because that's not the approach that worked for us, or maybe that approach even hurt us, and that's why now we're throwing it out to get away from the hurt, because obviously people do get hurt through you know, different religious things. But and I'll say this again too, back to chaplaincy, like I'm visiting people all the time that are like hurt by their church experiences. Catholics, Baptists, those are the most common in Philly, just in the demographic we're seeing, but others too. But so many people who are like, well, I used to be in church, and then they'll give could be just got tired of it, or it could be like, oh, there was money problems, or, oh, you know, I'm over the Catholic Church, and, you know, because of everything in the news about priests and stuff, you know, all kinds of things that they point to that are big issues. And so I do feel like it is a role of mine to help people draw out like, well, wait, what's still there of your faith? Because you left the church, but it sounds like you're saying you believe in God, that you have like a sort of personal faith. So I hope we can connect with that. And I may be the first like sort of minister type person to come back into their life in a while, since they've stopped engaging with the church. So it's an honor to be able to kind of like be in that space and help people kind of explore what's left of their faith if they do have it.
Yeah. And honor when you're welcomed into that space too.
Right.
Yeah. So beautiful. Exactly. So in all your years of ministry and in chaplain work, I'm curious if there's, you know, like one story that maybe has stuck with you or stayed with you, or even just changed the way you do what you do.
Yeah. It's so funny because at first I was like, how do I, you know, bring to mind one thing and whatever. And then I went way back to the very beginning. I mean, like, I might have still been in high school. I might have been in college. I don't know. So this is like not even me doing quote unquote ministry.
Okay.
but I want to share this because it's so related. There was a young guy, a couple years younger than me, but I mean, honestly, he might have only been 2 or 3 years younger, but at that time it felt like he was young compared to me. I was probably maybe in college and he was in high school. At the church I grew up in. Part of a family that was very active in the church, and, you know, his dad was like a leader, but he was known, he was sort of like the prodigal kid. He was known for someone who was always dealing with drug addiction and trying to come back and then slipping again. And so I remember outside of a house one day, some party, it was church folks. So, just a gathering or whatever. But he was smoking a cigarette, and I had talked to him on my way out, and he pointed out something that, like, I was one of the few people he felt comfortable around. Like, because, being in a church where everyone knows your deal, you just feel judged all the time about this dealing with drug addiction. So, being outside smoking a cigarette during the party, that was taboo too, in a way, so because he's still kind of like getting over certain things. So, but I talked to him and didn't speak negatively about anything he was doing. And so that, I don't know why that story came back. I didn't expect that to be the story I would share, but it kind of, that came back to my mind because it has to do with talking with people who are otherwise feel kind of cast out.
Come on.
Or judged, or they're not even like all the way there yet, right? They're still caught up in something. But for the person who does have the faith and the convictions to be able to be present with them without, starting with, well, why are you smoking? You need to give that up.
Come on.
That's what he was expecting to hear, I think, instead of like, how are you doing? Sounds like things have been really hard. Like, I can't imagine being like 16 years old and being in and out of rehab, whatever it was. Like, I don't know his exact age, but so he would, I remember, and I think the reason that story came back to mind is because his reaction to me kind of marked me, because I realized there was something special God put in me that has now been, with me throughout my life, to care in a way that, was unique from the other people maybe around me, to see someone who couldn't figure out how to connect, and to say like, hey, we all mess up, your mess up is just so visible to everybody, and that must be really hard. But my mess ups are so private, so everybody everybody thinks I'm so awesome, but I'm not all the way right yet, so I don't know. That stood out, and it's a very early story that I think framed and helped me think about who I became ever since. So God had that in me when I was very young, that ability to look at people and try to see the good in them. I even remember with other friends around that age, like they'd be complaining about so-and-so and whoever, in the church, in the youth group setting or whatever. And I just didn't like, dwelling on the negative aspects of other people. Yeah. I just wanted to like see the positive. So
yeah. Wow. It's so important. It's the building block from which everything else comes from: relationship, impact. I mean, even for those people who want to be go-getters and transform things in the world and change this and that. Okay, well, I'm one of those people, so let me just talk about myself. But even for people like me, that it's that first building block of grace. How do we see people? How do we interact with people? And for me, that came when I kind of press into seeing people the way God sees people, which means being able to take them where they're at, not where we want them to be. And in doing that, oftentimes our interaction with them and our relationship with them, if there's anything that can be taken from our life that can be helpful or beneficial, the door will only be open when we start there. So yeah, this is very beautiful. So I guess if you could speak maybe one thought to the listeners about living well before you die, I'm curious, with someone with your experience, what is that thing?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways to speak to it, because there is for me, certainly like a spiritual element, my mind first went to like, well, be open to faith, you know, be open to God, even if it's not a part of your life right now, and not something that you've ever been able to wrap your head around or believe in. Just try to cultivate an openness to start. Like, so when you hear things, you don't just write them off, that you can hear other people's experiences and say, oh, maybe there's something to that. They seem to be experiencing something good from that. Maybe there's something to that, even though I'm not quite there yet, you know, just being open. Because while I grew up with faith and kind of had it my whole life, it's changed, obviously, like we said, in different church contexts. And that required openness for me, especially in these recent years. I had to be open to something that was very different from anything I'd experienced. And it's given me so much growth. So openness is a big thing. And being willing to not just give in to, like, this might sound a little too specific, but like media influences too easily. There's so much trying to like control our thinking and put us in boxes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so keep resisting like being oversaturated in, like, again, to get more specific, like if you're watching one news channel all day long, you're probably missing some other part of the world.
Yeah.
Or even social media, you know, friends. If you're just in one like bubble, you're probably a little stuck. And so try to, and I'm not saying even just be open to every voice out there. There's obviously wrong voices in the world. But I'm saying kind of like turn down the noise, you know, get quiet, pay attention to what's really real. What's really real, like in our bodies, in nature, like what's actually real, as opposed to like all the philosophizing and politicizing of things.
Yeah.
What's actually real, what's actually important to spend time on. Sometimes we think it's really important to comment on things and to speak into things, or to read things, I need to read that article, need to read that book. Well, maybe, is that really the most important thing, or do we just need to go take a walk? Is that better? So that's a little bit more, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's good. We got one spiritual and one practical, and they're both important. Before we got on the call, we were catching up, and I was talking about how I've moved away from politics-centric podcasting, and you know, it was this decision that just was so clear to me that we were talking around the main issue and all the episodes, and they were civil and they were great, and I thank everybody who participated, but there's a certain wall that you eventually hit, that even when I was doing my live dinners, maybe we might have hit that wall a couple times. Those were a little different because there was definitely a spirit of hospitality in the room that superseded the conversation. And that's why I love those dinners, and that's why they worked and all. But with the podcasting, it's like we're talking around the issue. If humans can no longer connect at a heart level because they're missing the building blocks of all of the things we've talked about in this episode, grace and empathy and presence, without those building blocks, it doesn't matter what you talk about. And demonstrating civility, great. I mean, we definitely need to see that being done, but it doesn't nearly hit the nail on the head. And so I pulled back and began doing a lot more episodes like this, and having more conversations like this, and doing more work like this. And I feel like it was just kind of like, this is the way in. If we truly want to get to the heart of society, this is the way in. So, and when you were just sharing about, being less manipulated by the forces around us and honing in on what's important, I was thinking to myself, I doubt you've ever sat with someone at the end of their life and they say, I know I'm dying, but I'm just so grateful I never let my sister back in my life after
Yeah.
that one, after that one, election season.
Right.
I highly doubt that people look upon those decisions of cutting out people entirely
Right.
with pride, so it's good
It'll
to
be interesting to see the fallout from that 20 years from now, or whatever. Like when people are older who were younger right now. Like I wonder what this is going to feel like.
Yes.
Yeah, 20 and 30 years from now, however long I have. I don't
Yes.
know. Um,
Yes.
yeah, a lot of the people I visit now are, they were already older in this recent season.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this is one of the concerns, I guess, of society is where are we headed? What the
Yeah,
younger generations are largely declining in all of these things. There's statistics out the wahoo,
yeah.
declining in empathy, declining in communication skills. I just read some statistics the other day that were just like, oh Lord, help us. And
Well, yeah. What I'm hoping is that the generation really coming up now, like sometimes I hear little hopeful things of like kids who are like, I don't want to use phones, or
yes.
like they grew up with it from day one at this point. Like
Yeah.
teenagers now had smartphones pretty much from when they were born, I guess. Am I
Yeah.
calculating that right?
Yeah.
But like, so they're actually, I think there's gonna, I'm hoping there's kind of like a pushback, but on a
Yeah.
large enough scale that matters, not just
Yeah.
a few outliers.
Totally.
And I
Totally.
wonder with like you're saying, you're seeing those statistics, that information, like more and more that information is going to reach the younger kids once they get into college and start thinking critically, and there might be room for some change. But
Yeah.
I don't know. But technology still progresses. Like I don't know if
Ah,
we're not gonna
yes.
reverse technology
Mm-mm.
necessarily, but
Mm-mm.
I wonder if we can get to a place where like another generation can get healthier than the previous one
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of their technology use.
Oh yeah. Well,
We'll see.
I have these things on my mind most recently because I'm going to be speaking. I had the amazing opportunity, or I have the amazing opportunity to lecture at UPenn this fall, and so I'm just like I'm literally chomping at the bit to just meditating on what I want to share with these college students. I'm just like,
Mm,
oh man, there's so much I want to share with them, and I'm only going to have 45 minutes. So I'm just like, give me the words, God. But
mm-hmm,
just
mm-hmm.
engaging the younger generation now. And this is why I feel like this movement is so important and needs to
Yeah,
go on and just needs to proliferate.
yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. Jonathan, you're the best.
So good to talk to you.
So good to talk to you. Seriously, just thank you for giving us, a glimpse of a world that a lot of us don't get to see. And, what I'm really taking away from this conversation is that presence is not about having the right words or accomplishing a goal. It's about showing up and
Mm-hmm.
slowing down enough to really be with people. And so my hope is that we can each move through our days as people of
Mm-hmm.
peace, and not rushing to fix, but willing to sit and listen and let our presence pull people in. And if we truly want to influence people, that's how we do it. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for the work that you do and for all that you shared with us today.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I love talking about this stuff, so
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
the opportunity to share the conversation with others.
Wonderful. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a part 2 sometime.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, guys, that is the episode. And listen, share this episode. I mean, whether you came in as someone who shares our views, our beliefs, or whether you came in as someone who does not, there's just a lot here that I think is transformative. So, yeah. Please find us on Instagram at Set the Table Official. Same thing on YouTube. And then we recently joined Threads. So, same handle. Definitely can find us there. And if you don't know, I teach and train on culture transformation. And so we have a handful of live, interactive, half-day trainings, 4-hour, 3-hour, 2-hour trainings to go into almost any setting, whether you are a workplace leader, and you want to cultivate a company culture that's not just mandatory but meaningful, we'll come in and we'll do a live interactive training for your team that will really unlock the higher level collaborative strategy that will really get them working so much better together. And we all know statistics show that better collaboration leads to a better bottom line. And in light of today's episode, we have a workshop called Rooted and Reaching. How do you stand on your convictions and still engage culture in a way that draws them in and leads to long-lasting impact? And I'll actually be speaking on this topic at an upcoming event on September 20th for the Philadelphia Council of Clergy Summit. So if you are curious about that, you can go to phillyclergy.com/summit. We have a workshop for educators, teachers facing burnout, not knowing how to engage their students and gain control of the classroom. We have one for camp counselors. Every summer, diverse camp counselors come from every corner of the nation to one location, and they have to learn how to live together for the sake of the kids that they're about to counsel for the entire summer. So we have a team harmony training, teaching them how to live together well, on short notice too. And probably the most fun for me is curating custom workshops for you. And that's where you and I sit down and you let me know, hey, this is what I do, this is who I lead, this is my community, and this is what we need. And so whether it's conflict resolution or whether you just want an interactive and engaging, live, fun workshop that digs into everyone's personality types and communication styles so that your team can gel and serve and lead together better with more trust and understanding and self-awareness, because God knows we all need that. We create it and then we carry it out. So those are so much fun to do. Please reach out, setthetable.org. So until next time, let's keep setting the table for a healthier, more whole society. I'll see you later.